I think it's really important when someone does something that is hurtful to recognize that there are a number of different ways to deal with it. And I think the terms calling out and calling in and calling on come to mind because there's this idea that if we call people out, then we hold them to account. But what I've found is that it's actually really good to call out institutions and structures and organizations when they do something that is, hurtful or harmful or unethical, right? It's really important to hold them to account on that level. But I think when we're dealing on an interpersonal level, it's much better to call people in. Because what I know is that whenever someone kind of tells me that I'm doing the wrong thing, like, I don't know, I'm still a bit of a teenager. So the first thing I tend to do is be like, no, I'm not doing the wrong thing. And I start to get really defensive. And what that tends to do is it reinforces my position, whatever that may be. And so I imagine that if I call someone out when I feel like, they've done something that is offensive, if I do it in a way that creates more shame, like it just makes it hard for us to learn. That place of shame is not a place where I feel like I can learn. I don't feel open. I tend to get closed off and I tend to reinforce in my existing position. So I think, definitely calling out institutions and structures and organizations because they're big things, right? But when it comes to people, individuals, groups that we know, let's call them in and offer a compassionate way of communicating our needs and our thresholds and give them a choice, right? Most often, if people see that they've hurt someone and you communicate that honestly and, then most people do the right thing. But as soon as we tell them, you're bad, then they're not as likely to be open to change. So calling people in is really important. And the last piece is calling on. I think that it's really important that we can call on each other to support one another to change. And a big part of that is acknowledging that just because I believe something is wrong doesn't mean that it is necessarily wrong for everybody. And so, there's this great saying, I can't remember who it is, says, never attribute to malice that which you can attribute to ignorance, incompetence, or insecurity. And so generally, someone might say something and I may think, oh, that's awful, they're being really mean, but they might just not know any better. They might not know how to actually use the words in a way that lands properly, or they might just be scared or insecure. So, having a bit more of a compassionate approach is really important when we find ourselves in a position where someone says something that grates on us. Most importantly, I think, really seeing the human behind the hashtag helps us to call on each other so that we can make a difference together.